Just bring me my coffee, sweetheart, and try not to mess it up. The businessman in the $3,000 suit didn't even look up from his phone as he spoke to Sarah Martinez. Around him, his colleagues laughed at her expense. The 35-year-old waitress in the faded uniform who'd been serving tables at Murphy's Diner in Clarksville, Tennessee, for 2 years. They saw her scars as clumsiness, her quiet demeanor as weakness. What they didn't know was that those scars came from Fallujah, not kitchen accidents. And when 3 armed men burst through the diner's front door at 11:47 a.m., demanding everyone get on the ground, Sarah Martinez stopped being a waitress. She became what she'd always been, a combat veteran with 2 tours in Iraq and reflexes that don't fade with time. Welcome to Life Stories Archive, where ordinary people reveal extraordinary pasts. Murphy's Diner sat on Riverside Drive, a 1950s throwback with red vinyl booths and checkerboard floors. The kind of place where truckers mixed with business people, grabbing quick lunches between Fort Campbell and Nashville. Sarah Martinez had been working the morning shift for 24 months, ever since she'd moved to Clarksville after her medical discharge from the Army. She wore the same uniform every day, a pale blue dress with Murphy's embroidered over the pocket, comfortable shoes that had seen better years, and her long black hair pulled back in a practical ponytail. The only jewelry she wore was a simple chain around her neck, tucked beneath her collar where no one could see the dog tags. The breakfast rush brought the usual mix of customers, but this Tuesday morning also brought David Kellerman, regional sales manager for a Nashville pharmaceutical company. He'd chosen Murphy's for a client meeting specifically because it was authentic and blue-collar, terms he used like they were exotic curiosities rather than real people's lives. Kellerman arrived with 3 associates, all in expensive suits, all treating the diner like a tourist attraction. They took the large corner booth and immediately began making demands that weren't on the menu. "Excuse me, hun," Kellerman called loudly, snapping his fingers at Sarah. "We're going to need you to move that table closer to the window." "The lighting is better for our presentation." Sarah approached calmly. "I'm sorry, sir, but those tables are bolted down. I can see if we have another booth available." Kellerman's smile was condescending. "Sweetie, I think you can figure it out. We're spending good money here." His associate, a younger man named Brett, chimed in. "Maybe call the manager? Some of us have real jobs to get back to." The third man, Roger, was more direct. "Look, we need service that matches what we're paying for. If you can't handle simple requests, maybe you should find work more suited to your skill level." Sarah's jaw tightened slightly, but her voice remained professional. "I'll see what I can do, gentlemen. Can I start you with coffee?" "Finally," Kellerman muttered loud enough for the whole diner to hear. How hard was that? For the next hour, Kellerman's table treated Sarah like their personal servant. They complained about water temperature, demanded modifications to menu items that weren't possible, and made her return their food twice for imaginary problems. "This coffee tastes like it was made yesterday," Brett announced. "Can you make a fresh pot?" "Just for our table?" When Sarah explained that the coffee was made fresh every hour and had been brewed 20 minutes ago, Roger laughed. "Honey, I don't think you understand customer service. In the real world, when a customer asks for something, you don't argue." Other diners began to notice. An elderly couple in a nearby booth looked uncomfortable. 2 truckers at the counter shook their heads in disapproval, but Sarah continued to serve with quiet professionalism. never letting the insults show in her expression. The breaking point came when Kellerman's presentation materials accidentally fell to the floor. As Sarah bent to help pick them up, Brett made a crude comment about her appearance that caused his colleagues to burst into laughter. Sarah straightened slowly, the papers in her hands. For just a moment, something flickered in her eyes, something that had nothing to do with serving tables and everything to do with serving her country. But she simply placed the papers on the table and walked away. At exactly 11:47 a.m., 3 men in hoodies pushed through Murphy's front door. The first man, tall and nervous, immediately shouted, "Everybody down! This is a robbery. Nobody move!" The diner erupted in chaos. Customers screamed, diving under tables. Kellerman and his associates scrambled out of their booth, pure terror replacing their earlier arrogance. The elderly couple clutched each other, trembling. The second robber, shorter but more aggressive, waved a pistol at the customers. "Phone's on the floor! Now! Anyone calls the cops, somebody dies." The third man headed straight for the register, demanding the elderly cook, Murphy himself, open the cash drawer. Sarah Martinez stood behind the counter, seemingly frozen like everyone else. But while others saw panic, she saw tactical assessment. 3 targets, 2 firearms visible. Third robber's positioning blocked the rear exit. Civilians scattered but predictably positioned. Her military training kicked in automatically. Years of urban combat in Iraq had taught her to read situations in seconds, identify threats, calculate responses. The nervous robber was sweating, amateur, likely to make mistakes. The aggressive one with the gun was dangerous but overconfident. The third was focused on money, not security. Sarah had perhaps 15 seconds before they'd demand she empty the register, where she stood. When the aggressive robber turned his weapon toward the elderly couple, something in Sarah's expression changed completely. The mild-mannered waitress disappeared. In her place stood Staff Sergeant Sarah Martinez, 82nd Airborne Division, 2 tours in Iraq, trained in urban combat and close quarters engagement. "Hey!" the gunman shouted at her. "You behind the counter! Get over here!" Sarah moved, but not the way he expected. Instead of cowering, she approached with fluid, controlled steps, the walk of someone who had advanced on enemy positions under fire. "Empty that register!" the nervous one yelled. Sarah looked directly at him, her voice calm and steady. "You need to leave. Now, before this gets worse." The aggressive robber laughed. "Lady, are you crazy? I'm the one with the gun." Sarah's response was matter-of-fact. "You're the one making the mistake." What happened next took less than 5 seconds. As the gunman raised his weapon, Sarah moved with precision born from countless hours of combat training. She stepped left, inside his arc of fire, her right hand deflecting his wrist, while her left struck his throat with surgical accuracy. The gun clattered to the floor as the robber gasped for air. Sarah had already spun toward the second man, her elbow connecting with his solar plexus before he could react. He doubled over, winded and helpless. The third robber at the register turned just in time to see Sarah approaching. He raised his hands immediately. "Don't hurt me! I give up!" The diner fell silent except for the groans of the 2 incapacitated robbers. Sarah stood calmly among them, not even breathing hard, her waitress uniform unchanged, except for a slight tear at the shoulder. Kellerman stared from his position, cowering behind an overturned table, his mouth hanging open. The man who had mocked her skill level had just watched her neutralize 3 armed criminals with movements so fast and precise they seemed choreographed. "How did you—" Brett stammered. Sarah walked to the phone behind the counter, dialing 911 with the same calm efficiency she'd shown taking their coffee orders. As she spoke to the dispatcher, she kept one eye on the subdued robbers, her posture alert but relaxed. Murphy's Diner, 412 Riverside Drive. 3 attempted armed robbers in custody. Need police and ambulance. No civilians injured. Murphy himself, who had known Sarah for 2 years but never asked about her background, looked at her with new eyes. "Sarah, where did you learn to do that?" Before she could answer, one of the truckers at the counter spoke up. "That's military training, brother. Combat training." Sarah nodded once, reaching beneath her uniform collar to pull out the dog tags she'd kept hidden for 2 years. Staff Sergeant Sarah Martinez, 82nd Airborne. 2 tours, Iraq, 2016 to 2019. The transformation in the diner was immediate and complete. Kellerman, who minutes earlier had been snapping his fingers and calling her sweetheart, now struggled to make eye contact. His associates, who had questioned her competence, sat in stunned silence. As police sirens approached, the elderly couple approached Sarah. "Young lady," the woman said with tears in her eyes, "thank you. You saved our lives." Sarah's response was characteristically humble. "Just did what needed doing, ma'am." But Kellerman wasn't finished learning his lesson. As police led the robbers away, he approached Sarah hesitantly. I owe you an apology. The way we treated you today." Sarah looked at him with the same steady gaze she'd used on the robbers. "Mr. Kellerman, you didn't know who I was. But you also didn't know who anyone else in here was. That elderly couple you saw cowering? He's a Korean War veteran. Those truckers? One of them served 3 tours in Afghanistan." She straightened her uniform name tag. "Maybe next time you'll remember that everyone has a story. Everyone deserves respect, and you never know who might be the one standing between you and danger." Sarah Martinez finished her shift that day, served the remaining customers with the same quiet professionalism she'd always shown. The only difference was the way people looked at her, not as invisible help, but as the hero she'd always been. Kellerman left a $100 tip and a handwritten note. "Thank you for your service, both kinds." Murphy offered her a raise, a promotion, anything she wanted. Sarah declined. She liked her job, liked the routine, liked serving people who treated her with basic human decency. But word spread through Clarksville about the waitress at Murphy's Diner, who'd taken down 3 armed robbers without breaking a sweat. Veterans began stopping by, not for the food, but for the chance to share coffee with a fellow soldier. Sarah Martinez never asked for recognition, never told war stories, never sought the spotlight. She just served coffee, took orders, and carried her service quietly. Until the day her country called on her skills one more time. Some heroes wear uniforms. Others wear waitress aprons. The uniform doesn't make the hero. The hero makes the uniform matter. Have you ever discovered that someone you overlooked had an incredible background? Share their story in the comments, and remember, the next time you're tempted to judge someone by their job or appearance, you might be disrespecting someone who once stood between danger and innocent lives. If this story reminded you to treat everyone with dignity, subscribe to Life Stories Archive. Because every quiet warrior deserves recognition.